For your 5 years of service, Adira, we have something special for you. The conference room fell silent as Phoebe's words hung between us. Everyone had gathered, lab technicians, researchers, administrative staff, all watching with strange smiles I couldn't quite read. The red gift box sat between us on the table, tied with a white satin ribbon that looked expensive. Too expensive for a standard work anniversary. I reached for it, noticing how my coworkers leaned forward slightly. Someone's phone was pointed at me, recording. "Go ahead," Phoebe urged, her smile tight and perfect. "Open it." The ribbon came undone easily. I lifted the lid, expecting maybe a watch or a gift card. Instead, a stack of papers with bold red lettering across the top. Notice of termination. Unfortunately, Phoebe announced to the room, not to me. Some team members resist progress and innovation. At Bridgewell, we can't afford obstruction when lives depend on our medications reaching patients. Laughter rippled through the crowd. My hands trembled as I lifted the papers. Sight, obstructive behavior, an inability to align with company objectives. I read aloud, my voice surprisingly steady despite the hurricane inside me. Dale from marketing zoomed in with his phone camera, capturing my face. "This is gold," he whispered to Jen beside him. 5 years. 5 years of 60-hour weeks, missed dinners, canceled vacations. 5 years of believing I was making a difference. Phoebe extended a pen. "We'll need your signature, of course." Something in me hardened then. I took the pen, signed my name with one fluid motion, placed the cap back on carefully, and stood up. "Thank you for the opportunity," I said, looking Phoebe directly in the eyes. "I wish you all the best with the Luminax launch." The smile faltered on her face, just for a second. That tiny crack in her perfect composure was worth everything. I walked out with my head high, though my legs felt like they might give way with each step. Behind me, the party continued. Cake being served, people already forgetting the woman who'd just lost everything. They had no idea what I'd already done. If you've ever felt that burn of betrayal, that moment when the floor drops from beneath you and suddenly everything you believed about your life is a lie, hit that like button. Subscribe to hear how this story ends, because trust me, what happened next changed not just my life, but saved thousands of others. And let me know in the comments if you've ever had to choose between doing what's right and doing what's easy. My name is Adira Knight. Until 3 months ago, I was Senior Quality Assurance Specialist at one of America's fastest-growing pharmaceutical companies. I graduated top of my class with a master's in biochemistry and joined the company believing I would help ensure medications reaching patients were safe and effective. The first 2 years were everything I'd hoped for. I lived for the precision of the lab, the reliability of data, the satisfaction of verifying that what we produced matched exactly what we promised. My tiny apartment near the research campus became more of a storage unit than a home. I lived and breathed my work. Phoebe Landry joined as Chief Quality Officer in my 3rd year. She swept in with designer suits and presentations about streamlining processes and accelerating approval timelines. The executive team adored her. She spoke their language: profits, market share, shareholder value. I first noticed the problem 6 months ago during routine testing of Luminax, our new blockbuster medication for chronic pain. The samples showed unusual variations in the active compound, small enough to pass automated quality checks, but concerning when viewed as a pattern across multiple batches. "This is well within acceptable ranges," Phoebe said when I brought her the results. We stood in her glass-walled office, the lab visible beyond, everyone watching but unable to hear. "Technically, yes," I replied, "but 3 consecutive batches showing the same deviation suggests a systematic issue in production." She smiled, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Adira, honey, do you know how many people are suffering right now, waiting for this medication? Every day we delay is another day someone's grandmother can't get out of bed from pain. Every day we rush is a day we risk sending something dangerous to that same grandmother," I countered. Her eyes hardened. "Run the tests again. I'm sure you'll find everything's fine." I ran them again and again. Each time, the results showed the same problem. Under specific conditions, the kind that would exist in a human liver, Luminax broke down into compounds that showed potential toxicity. I documented everything meticulously. Each test, each result, each conversation. When I submitted my findings through our quality assurance portal, they vanished within hours. No acknowledgement, no follow-up, just gone, as if I'd never submitted them. Late one evening, while searching for my missing reports, I discovered something that turned my concern to horror. The original trial data for Luminax had been altered. Subtle changes, a decimal point moved, a percentage adjusted, but enough to hide the very issue I was seeing now. Someone had known about the toxicity problem from the beginning. I needed allies. Juno in the adjacent lab had been with the company even longer than me. I carefully approached her during lunch break, away from cameras and curious ears. "Have you noticed anything unusual with the Luminax results?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. Her spoon paused halfway to her mouth. "Why do you ask? Just some inconsistencies I'm trying to sort out? Probably nothing." She lowered her voice. "Look, I don't know what you found, but don't push it. Last year, Thomas in quality control raised concerns about another medication. 2 weeks later, he was gone. Performance issues, they said. Nobody's heard from him since. That night, I couldn't sleep. Was I being paranoid? Was I missing something obvious that explained the results? Or was I witnessing something genuinely dangerous being deliberately ignored? The annual leadership retreat at Lake Pinewood provided my answer. I wasn't invited, but as quality lead on Luminax, I was asked to prepare materials for Phoebe's presentation. I delivered them personally to the resort, hoping to emphasize my concerns one more time. I found the conference room door slightly ajar, and Phoebe's voice drifting out. "The Q4 timeline is ambitious but achievable," she was saying. "We can have Luminax on shelves by December if we move forward now." "What about those testing anomalies?" our CEO asked. "The board is nervous about another recall." "Minor variations," Phoebe dismissed. "Nothing that impacts safety or efficacy. The profit potential here is enormous. First to market in this category means we own the space for years." I couldn't help myself. I pushed the door open. "Those aren't minor variations," I said, 7 pairs of executive eyes turning to me in shock. Batch 457 showed liver toxicity at standard dosages. "We need expanded testing before—" "Adira," Phoebe cut me off. "Thank you for dropping off the materials. We won't keep you. People could get sick," I persisted. "We need to understand why." "Some people," Phoebe said coldly, "value bureaucracy over healing patients. The suffering of people waiting for this medication apparently means nothing compared to checking boxes on forms." The CEO frowned. "Is this true, Phoebe? Is there a safety concern?" "Absolutely not," she replied smoothly. "Adira is extremely thorough, which we value, but in this case, she's misinterpreting standard variances. I've had 3 independent reviewers confirm the results are within parameters." That was a lie. There had been no independent review. I opened my mouth to say so, but the look in Phoebe's eyes stopped me. It wasn't just anger, it was promise. A promise that pursuing this would end badly for me. I nodded stiffly and left, my mind racing. If I couldn't work within the system, I needed to find another way. That night, I contacted Dr. Eliza Ward at the university where I'd done my graduate work. Without mentioning specifics, I asked if she could analyze some samples as part of a theoretical research project. She agreed. For the next 6 weeks, I lived a double life. At work, I appeared to have accepted Phoebe's decision, focusing on other projects. But I carefully collected samples, test results, and data, passing them to Eliza under the radar. Then came my work anniversary and that red box with termination papers. What Phoebe didn't know as I walked out of that conference room was that Eliza's team had confirmed my findings the night before. Luminax, in its current formulation, posed a significant risk of liver damage in roughly 15% of patients, especially among older adults, the very population most likely to use it. I had the evidence. But without access to company systems, how could I stop a dangerous medication from reaching the market? Who would believe a fired employee with an apparent vendetta? As I cleaned out my desk, guarded by security as if I might steal staplers on my way out, Kai from the lab passed by. He'd always been kind to me, though we weren't close. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "This isn't right." "It's fine," I said automatically. "No, it's not." He glanced around, then slipped me his card. "Call me. Not everyone agrees with what's happening." That card became my lifeline, because what Phoebe also didn't know was that her perfect moment of triumph was coming, the holiday party coinciding with FDA approval announcement for Luminax. And I was already planning to be there. I stared at Kai's card for 3 days before I called him. 3 days of alternating between rage and despair in my apartment, staring at the ceiling and replaying 5 years of memories, wondering where I'd gone wrong. The morning of the fourth day, I made the call. Meet me at Copper Kettle, the one on Elmwood, Kai said, voice barely above a whisper. 7 tonight, come alone and don't tell anyone. The cafe was busy enough that we wouldn't stand out, but quiet enough to talk. Kai sat in the corner, hood pulled up despite the warm evening. His eyes darted around constantly. Are you being followed? I asked, only half joking as I slid into the chair across from him. He didn't smile. Maybe. Phoebe has been on a rampage since you left. Surprise inspections of workstations, checking phone logs, monitoring emails. Why? I'm gone. She won. Kai leaned forward. Because the day after you left, someone accessed the secure server and downloaded all the original Luminax trial data. My heart skipped. It wasn't me. I know. It was me. I nearly knocked over my coffee. You? Keep your voice down, he hissed. Look, I've been watching. The things you found? I saw them too, but I was too scared to say anything. When they fired you like that, humiliated you in front of everyone. He shook his head. It wasn't right. So you risked your job to what? Get revenge for me? Not for you. For my sister. His voice cracked slightly. She has chronic pain. She'd be first in line for Luminax. If what you found is true. I pulled out my phone, showed him the message from Eliza confirming her team's findings. Kai read it, his face growing paler. They're planning to announce FDA approval at the holiday party next month, he said. Phoebe's already been promised a vice presidency. The marketing campaign launches the following day. How can they have approval already if the medication is dangerous? The data they submitted to the FDA was cleaned up. Perfect safety profile. He slid a flash drive across the table. This is what they should have seen. I stared at the tiny device that could destroy a billion-dollar launch and end multiple careers. What am I supposed to do with this? I've been fired. No one will listen to me. Not alone, they won't. Kai took a sip of his tea. But you're not alone anymore. That night, I met Juno, who had processed many of the same lab results I had. Then Reed from legal, who had been troubled by unusual confidentiality agreements around Luminax. Finally, Talia from clinical trials, who had noticed patient complaints being systematically downgraded in severity. A small resistance was forming, but we faced an impossible challenge. How to stop a medication launch when the company controlled all official channels. We need someone outside the company, Reed said during our third meeting. This one in the back room of a bookstore owned by his cousin. Someone with enough authority to demand attention. The FDA, suggested Juno. Reed shook his head. They'll just refer it back to the company for internal investigation. By the time that process plays out, the medication will be on the market. Media? Offered Talia. Maybe, I said. But we need someone who understands the science, who won't sensationalize, but also won't back down under pressure. That's when Talia mentioned Zoe Harper, an investigative health reporter known for exposing pharmaceutical industry problems. She broke the story on those contaminated antibiotics last year. The manufacturer tried to discredit her, threatened lawsuits, but she held firm. Every detail in her reporting was verified. How do we reach her? I asked. I know someone who knows someone, Talia said with a small smile. 2 days later, I sat across from Zoe in a park 3 towns over, watching ducks glide across a pond while I explained everything. She listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes. You understand what you're asking? She said finally. Your career in pharmaceuticals will be over. Forever. No company will touch you after this. My career ended the moment I opened that gift box, I replied. Now, I'm just trying to prevent people from being hurt. She studied me, then nodded. I'll need to verify everything independently. No offense, but you can't just take my word for it. I get it. I handed her contact information for Eliza at the university. Start here. She can confirm the independent testing. If, and I stress if, I can corroborate your claims, what exactly did you have in mind? That's when the plan started forming. Zoe would investigate quietly, building her case. Meanwhile, we needed to find a way into the holiday party, the moment when the company would be most vulnerable, when everyone who mattered would be in one room. They've hired an outside catering company, Kai reported a week later. Temporary staff for the evening. A path opened before me. Getting hired by the catering company was surprisingly easy. A few details changed on my resume. Hair dyed a different color, glasses instead of my usual contacts. No one at the company had any reason to look twice at servers. The weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Zoe built her case methodically, gathering documents, interviewing former patients from the clinical trials, consulting independent experts. I practiced being invisible, learning the rhythms and expectations of catering work through a few smaller events. The night before the holiday party, we gathered one last time. "Are you sure about this?" Juno asked me. "Once it starts, there's no turning back." "I'm sure," I said, though my stomach twisted with anxiety. "What about you? You're all still employed there. The blowback will hit you too." "Some things matter more than jobs," Reed said quietly. As we parted ways, Talia hugged me tightly. "Be careful tomorrow. Phoebe is dangerous when cornered." I barely slept that night, running through every possible scenario, every potential failure point. By morning, I felt hollow-eyed but resolute. The venue was a historic mansion converted into an event space, all gleaming hardwood and crystal chandeliers. Staff entered through the back, past security that barely glanced at our IDs. Inside, dozens of white-clothed tables surrounded a small stage. A banner hung above it, celebrating innovation, changing lives. I tied on my black apron, pulled my hair back, and became just another server arranging silverware and folding napkins. At 6 o'clock, guests began arriving. Executives in expensive suits, regulatory officials, investors, marketing teams. I kept my head down, offering trays of appetizers, refilling water glasses, all while scanning the room. Phoebe arrived fashionably late, wearing a stunning emerald dress that made heads turn. The CEO greeted her with air kisses and a champagne flute. "The woman of the hour," he announced, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. I moved closer, pretending to collect empty glasses. "The FDA just sent the final approval letter this afternoon," Phoebe was saying. "We're officially clear to launch." "Perfect timing," the CEO replied. "The press release goes out at 9 tonight, during your speech. By morning, our stock will be soaring." My hand trembled slightly, nearly toppling the glasses on my tray. It was really happening. The medication that could harm thousands was about to be unleashed. Dinner service began. I worked methodically, face blank, invisible among the celebration. Across the room, I spotted Kai seated with other mid-level staff. He caught my eye briefly, gave an imperceptible nod. At 8:30, Zoe texted, "In position. Ready when you are." The plan was simple. Zoe would enter during the public portion of the event, using her press credentials. The timing had to be perfect. After Phoebe's announcement, but before the evening concluded, when everyone who mattered would still be present. I was clearing plates from the main course when a security guard approached me. "You, server, what are you doing back here?" We were in a service corridor that led toward the event office, where Zoe and I had planned to meet. "Just taking a shortcut to the kitchen," I said, gesturing with my tray of dirty plates. He frowned. "Kitchen's the other direction." My heartbeat thundered in my ears. "Oh, sorry. First night here, still learning the layout." He studied my face a moment too long. "Do I know you from somewhere?" "I don't think so," I forced a smile. "I just have one of those faces people think they recognize." After what felt like an eternity, he shrugged. "Kitchen's back that way. Don't wander around where you shouldn't be." I nodded, turned around, and walked away, my legs shaking. That had been too close. I needed to be more careful. The CEO tapped his glass for attention as dessert was being served. "Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our Chief Quality Officer and soon-to-be Vice President of Research and Development, Phoebe Landry." Applause filled the room as Phoebe took the stage, radiant with triumph. I positioned myself near the back, close to where Zoe would enter. "Thank you all," Phoebe began. "Tonight represents the culmination of years of dedication and perseverance. Luminax isn't just another medication, it's a revolution in pain management that will change countless lives." She continued, describing the rigorous testing and unwavering commitment to safety that had brought Luminax to this moment. Each word was a twist of the knife. "I'm proud to announce that today, we received final FDA approval for Luminax. By this time next month, patients across the country will experience relief many thought impossible." Cheers erupted. Glasses clinked. The CEO beamed. "None of this would be possible without my incredible team," Phoebe continued, though I noticed she named no one specifically. "Their dedication to our mission has been inspiring." That's when I saw Zoe slip in through the side entrance, press badge visible. Our eyes met briefly. I gave the slightest nod. "And so," Phoebe said, raising her glass, "I invite you all to toast with me, to Luminax, to innovation, to changing lives." "Excuse me," Zoe called out, her clear voice cutting through the moment. Zoe Harper, Health Investigations. I have some questions about patient trial irregularities in the Luminax approval process. The room went still. Phoebe's smile froze on her face. This is a private event, the CEO said, stepping forward. The press portion begins in 30 minutes. Zoe didn't budge. I have copies of original lab reports showing liver toxicity rates significantly higher than what was reported to regulators. Would you care to comment? The glass slipped from Phoebe's hand, shattering on the stage. And in that moment, watching her perfect world begin to crack, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: hope. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the suddenly silent room. Hundreds of eyes darted between Phoebe on stage and Zoe standing confidently in the center aisle. Security, the CEO murmured to someone beside him, but Zoe was already moving forward. I have copies of unaltered test results showing that Luminax causes severe liver damage in certain populations, she continued, her voice carrying easily in the hushed space. Results that mysteriously disappeared from your official FDA submission. Phoebe recovered quickly, her smile returning, though it seemed plastered on. Ms. Harper, is it? I'm not sure what documents you think you have, but Luminax has undergone the most rigorous testing in our company's history. Including batch 457? Zoe asked. The one showing toxicity levels 6 times higher than disclosed to regulators? A ripple went through the room. I noticed several FDA representatives exchanging concerned glances. This is hardly the appropriate forum, Phoebe began. I also have testimony from researchers involved in the original trials, Zoe continued, undeterred. Patients who experienced severe side effects that were downgraded or omitted from final reports. 2 security guards approached Zoe from opposite sides of the room. I slipped further into the shadows, heart pounding. This is absurd, the CEO declared, stepping forward. We'll be pursuing legal action for these slanderous accusations. Zoe smiled. I welcome that, sir. Discovery would be fascinating. She turned to address the room. 3 independent laboratories have verified these findings. My full report with supporting documentation goes live at midnight tonight. The guards reached her, each taking an arm. Is it true? Someone called out. An older man in an expensive suit who I recognized as the head FDA reviewer for Luminax. Were safety results altered? Absolutely not, Phoebe insisted, but her voice had lost its authoritative edge. That's when Kai stood up. All eyes turned to him. I was on the original testing team, he said clearly. The results were altered. I have the originals. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Another person stood. Juno. I can confirm that, she said. The liver toxicity data was systematically removed from reports. This is a coordinated attack, Phoebe sputtered. Disgruntled employees trying to damage our reputation. Talia rose next. I supervised patient interviews during clinical trials. Numerous patients reported symptoms consistent with liver damage that never appeared in final documentation. The room erupted in voices. The FDA officials huddled together, speaking urgently. Investors began moving toward exits, already pulling out phones. The security guards, unsure what to do with Zoe now, released her arms and looked to the CEO for direction. I stayed hidden, watching it all unfold. This was never about me being the hero. It was about the truth finding its way to the surface through many voices. Phoebe scanned the room frantically, looking for allies and finding uncertain faces instead. Then her eyes locked with mine. Recognition dawned. Even with different hair and glasses, she knew me. Her expression transformed from confusion to rage in an instant. You, she hissed, the microphone still catching her voice. You did this. All eyes followed her gaze. My cover was blown, but it didn't matter now. The truth was already spreading through the room like wildfire. Unstoppable. I stepped forward, removing my glasses. I didn't falsify data, Phoebe. I just made sure the real data wasn't buried forever. The CEO grabbed the microphone. This event is concluded. Please exit in an orderly fashion. We'll be issuing a formal statement tomorrow addressing these baseless accusations. Nobody moved. If they're baseless, called out one of the FDA officials, then you won't mind showing us the original data files tonight. That's not possible on such short notice, the CEO stammered. Actually, Reed said, standing up from a table near the back, as legal counsel, I can tell you we're required to maintain those files for regulatory review at any time. They should be immediately accessible. The room descended into chaos. Executives huddled together in urgent conversation. Investors made phone calls in corners. The FDA officials approached Zoe, examining the documents she carried. Through it all, Phoebe remained frozen on stage, staring at me with undisguised hatred. I moved toward the exit, my part in this drama complete. Outside, the cold night air hit my lungs like freedom. My phone buzzed with a text from Kai. They're demanding access to the servers now. FDA putting approval on immediate hold. Justice was rolling forward without me now, an unstoppable force. I sat on a bench in the garden outside the venue, listening to the muffled sounds of the imploding party, and waited. Nearly an hour later, Zoe found me there. Hell of a night, she said, sitting beside me. Will it be enough? I asked. The FDA has officially suspended approval pending a full investigation. Your friends inside are being interviewed as we speak. She smiled slightly. The company's stock is going to take a beating when markets open tomorrow. And Phoebe? When I left, she was having what appeared to be a very unpleasant conversation with federal regulators. Zoe paused. You should know, she's claiming you fabricated evidence because you were fired. I laughed softly. Of course she is. It won't work. Too many people are corroborating your version now. The dam has broken. She studied me curiously. How does it feel? I considered the question. Not like I expected. I thought I'd feel triumphant or vindicated. Instead, I just feel tired and sad that it had to come to this. What will you do now? I have no idea. I stared up at the stars. My career in pharmaceuticals is over. Whistleblowers don't get hired. Heroes might, she replied. 3 months later, I sat in a different kind of conference room, this one in Washington, D.C. The congressional hearing on safety and oversight in pharmaceutical approval processes had been underway for 4 hours, and I was the final witness. Miss Knight, said the committee chairwoman, your testimony today has been invaluable. Can you tell us what you believe would prevent similar situations in the future? I leaned toward the microphone. The problem isn't a lack of regulations, but enforcement. Quality assurance professionals need protected channels to report concerns without fear of retaliation. Independent verification should be standard for all safety data, not exceptional. And what happened to you after you reported these concerns internally? I was publicly fired on my 5th work anniversary. My boss presented me with termination papers as a gift in front of my colleagues. Murmurs filled the chamber. And where is your former boss now? Phoebe Landry is currently awaiting trial on charges of fraud, falsification of data, and conspiracy to distribute a potentially harmful substance. The investigation had revealed more than even I had known. Phoebe had been cutting corners on multiple medications, building her reputation as a miracle worker who could get approvals when others couldn't. The company's stock had dropped 60%. The CEO had resigned. 3 board members were under investigation. Ms. Knight, final question, the chairwoman said. Given what happened, would you make the same choice again? I thought about the cost, my career, my financial security, months of anxiety and uncertainty. Then I thought about the thousands of people who might have suffered liver damage or worse. Without hesitation, I answered. The hearing concluded. As I gathered my notes, a woman approached me, stern-faced, impeccably dressed. Adira Knight? I'm Dr. Naomi Chen, director of the newly formed Pharmaceutical Integrity Commission. We're building an independent oversight body with authority to investigate safety concerns across the industry. She handed me a business card. We need people who understand the science and have the courage to stand up for what's right. I'd like to discuss a position with you. I stared at the card in disbelief. You want to hire me? Sometimes, she said with a small smile. Doing the right thing should be rewarded, not punished. 1 year later, I stood in my new office, unpacking the last box of belongings. The Pharmaceutical Integrity Commission had grown quickly, becoming a powerful force for accountability in the industry. As Director of Quality Review, I led a team dedicated to independently verifying safety data for medications before approval. The last item in my box was a frame containing those termination papers from Phoebe. I hung them on the wall beside my credentials, a reminder of where I'd been and why this work mattered. My phone rang. Kai, now, our liaison with industry scientists. Turn on the news, he said without preamble. I clicked on the small TV in my office. Breaking news banner. Former pharmaceutical executive sentenced to 8 years for fraud. There was Phoebe, being led away in handcuffs after her sentencing hearing. The reporter was summarizing the case. Found guilty on all counts related to the falsification of safety data for the pain medication Luminax. Prosecutors credited whistleblower Adira Knight with preventing what could have been a public health disaster. I turned off the TV, feeling a complex mix of emotions, not joy at her downfall, but relief that justice had been served, that the system, however imperfectly, had eventually worked. My assistant knocked on the door. Dr. Chen wants to know if you've finished reviewing the Mitchell proposal. The board meets in 20 minutes. Just finishing up, I said, turning to my desk where a stack of research data awaited my analysis. This was my revenge, not Phoebe's downfall, but this, building something better from the ashes of what had happened. Creating a system where the next person who found dangerous data wouldn't have to risk everything to be heard, where patient safety truly came before profit. I picked up the Mitchell file and headed to the boardroom, leaving the framed termination papers on my wall, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful response to being pushed out a door is building your own house. If this story moved you, please hit like and subscribe. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between what was easy and what was right? Share your story in the comments. And remember, sometimes what looks like the end of your story is really just the beginning of a better one.